films from Ireland that they should look at, recipes that they can cook, and music that they should listen to. There's been a huge amount of content produced to keep Ireland top of mind, and all of that's available to you. The campaign has had some really good results so far. We've reached about 95 million people, 18 million have viewed our videos, and there's been 4 million engagements with people promising to visit Ireland when the time is right. Recently, we wanted to understand how you, our travel trade partners, felt about the business to Ireland to help us shape our recovery plans. Your views are so important to us as we develop those plans. So many of you participated in that, and one of the things we asked was what we could do to support your business to Ireland going forward. A few key themes came out of that. The first was information on the practicalities of reopening, what that might look like, and how we would reassure visitors about health and safety standards in Ireland. So here we are, and today's webinar is about answering that need. The other thing you asked us to do was to make sure we had strong consumer campaigns and markets promoting Ireland when the time is right. To that end, we are doing a very large research programme at the moment that will tell us what visitors want, when they're ready to travel, and what about Ireland will motivate them to travel. We'll be sharing those key insights with you as they become available. You also mentioned concerns about cancellation policies and flexibility in contracting, which we have shared with the tourism industry here on the island of Ireland, and Fáilte and Tourism Northern Ireland are doing great work in relation to that. As we look to the future and focus on rebuilding and recovery, we feel Ireland is in a great position when the time is right to get visitors going forward. What people are looking for is a shift towards smaller groups, more independently minded travellers, and holidays that are more tuned to nature and outdoor activities. Ireland really delivers this. We've great open spaces, we've great outdoor activities. Visitors can visit the Walshire, the hills and the mountains all in the one day. Our cities are low rise and relatively uncrowded. Dublin has beautiful beaches and mountains on its doorstep, and Belfast is close to rolling hills and spectacular coastal driving routes. And in terms of accommodation, whether your clients are looking for private rentals or five-star luxury escapes, we can cater for the full range of accommodation requirements. Obviously, we're really excited about getting visitors back as soon as possible. But to tell us more about the practicalities around that and how our attractions, experiences and accommodation sector will look after the health and safety of your guests, I'm delighted now to hand over to our first speaker, Tara Kerry, the Registrar and Accommodation Development Manager with Fáilte Ireland. Tara, I'll hand over to you there.
Thank you, Siobhan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Siobhan, as said, it's Tara Kerry, and I am the Accommodation Development Manager with Fáilte Ireland. Now, excuse me for a second, I'm having just a slight technical difficulty with sharing my screen, but all going well. We'll be there in a minute. So, can I just check with Siobhan if you can see my screen?
I can't see your screen yet, Tara, no. Give us 2 seconds there.
It may just be taking a second. I'm sure you'd all much prefer to be looking at my screen than listening to me talking about it. So hopefully that now has come up. Siobhan, can you see that?
Still no, unfortunately. Audrey, can you help out there?
Yes, maybe we'll run with Audrey. And if we have a technical, the only issue I may have is just a slight delay with changing slides. So,
Tara, I'm going to upload the presentation here and you can tell me whenever you want me to change the page, okay?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, I think it might have just clicked in now.
There we go.
Perfect.
Can that? Yeah, perfect. So sorry about that. It's never a good presentation without a technical issue. So I'm just bringing up the So, right, hopefully now everybody can see my slides. So basically, as I've said, my name is Tara Kerry and I'm from the Accommodation Development section within Fáilte Ireland. And Fáilte Ireland is the National Tourism Development Authority of Ireland. So we work very closely with businesses throughout the country, all tourism businesses, regardless of whether they're accommodation, attractions, activities, food and beverage, etc. So due to the widespread concern over the recommencement of economic and social activity during the COVID-19 pandemic, Fáilte Ireland, in consultation with the Irish government, created reopening guidelines and a COVID-19 safety charter. Now, both the charter and the guidelines distinguishes tourism and hospitality businesses that are compliant with hygiene and safety controls for the prevention of COVID-19 and other possible infections. So, Fáilte Ireland's reopening guidelines for tourism and hospitality businesses were launched on the 9th of June 2020. And you may ask, why did we do these? Well, Fáilte Ireland believes that it's essential that everyone from visitors to employees can feel confident that tourism businesses across Ireland are reopening safely. Now, how did we do this? Well, we worked closely with the tourism sector because we felt this was very important, because these are the people who are on the ground and these are the people who are meeting your clients. And we also worked with an infection control experts to ensure that these guidelines could instill public confidence. So what types of tourism businesses did we work with? As I said earlier, we work with all different types of businesses, but we specifically worked with groups who represented attractions, activities, food experiences, restaurants, pubs, accommodation. We worked with bodies like the Hotel Federation of Ireland, self-catering, caravan and camping, basically, and B&Bs. We covered all the spectrum of accommodation that is covered within the National Quality Assurance Framework within Ireland. And we specifically focused in on the areas that would actually make the experience of a holiday in Ireland. So it wasn't just accommodation, it was, as I said, the attractions and the activities. So what were the key messages that we had when we were developing these guidelines? Well, first and foremost, health and safety. And I suppose it goes without saying, health and safety is to the forefront of everyone's mind to ensure the safety of the business, the employees and the guests. So everything was underpinned in health and safety. Secondly, we looked very much so at risk assessments. And again, risk assessments were very important to all businesses, because this is something very new. After being closed for quite a substantial period of time, businesses needed to know, they know how to operate their business, but they needed to know how to reopen safely. And again, to come back to that point of instilling confidence in the consumer. So the risk assessments, to give you a very quick overview on what is involved there. So that would be, to use an example of a hotel, you know, from the minute that you arrive, whether it be in the car park, moving into reception, the public areas, risk assessments were done for each of these areas. That would include bedrooms. It would include any interactions with employees, including the restaurants, the bars, everything. And again, these risk assessments have been great for businesses because they can use them as standard performance manuals to ensure that they're doing what they're doing well and continuing to give that warm Irish welcome that they always would have had. The other area is employees, and we do tend to get a lot of questions around employees because there's obviously a concern for people re-entering properties and stating, or businesses stating, well, are the employees trained? So to give you a great degree of confidence in that, the Irish government invested heavily in the reopening of all businesses across the country. And one of the big initiatives that they actually introduced was a program called the Return to Work Safely Protocol. Now, that's not just specifically for tourism businesses, it's for every business in the country. And it's overseen by the Health and Safety Authority of Ireland, where there are spot checks. So all employees have to receive training prior to returning to work. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in a little while, introduced an infection control program as well. So anybody coming into Ireland, any of your clients visiting any property, again, depending whether, it doesn't matter whether it's an accommodation provider, an attraction activity, etc., all staff and all employees have been trained. Cleaning and disinfecting, well, again, that goes without saying. You know, this was a key message that we wanted to ensure people understood was actually happening. Now, the one thing I would say about the tourism industry in Ireland is this was always a key factor. Cleaning and disinfecting would have always been a big issue, but nobody ever broadcast it because they felt it was taken as an absolute given. This was something that people needed to do. But now what we're doing is we're advising businesses to promote what they're doing, to make people aware that there is this large level of cleaning and disinfecting ongoing. And as part of the guidelines we've developed, we have, and only as a very minimum, we're saying in public areas at least twice a day, there is a full cleaning and disinfecting of these areas. But any property that you walk into at the moment, it's very obvious and very visible that there are employees on the front line ensuring that those high touch items like door handles, counters, etc., are all being continually cleaned. And everybody takes account of things like hand sanitization, etc. So that's key. Physical and social distancing, well, public health advice in Ireland at the time of arrival must be adhered to in all tourism businesses. Well, let me be honest, it's not just all tourism businesses, it's across everything. At the moment, the Government of Ireland have a stipulation of 2 metres distancing between non-household individuals, which means that people who aren't living or residing in the one location. So again, that could change as time moves on, but at this moment it is at 2 metres. Capacity. There's currently no constraints in capacity in accommodation. However, there may be constraints in public areas, whether it be within accommodation providers, attractions, activity, or food and beverage outlets, due to the physical distancing at that time. So again, this has to be adhered to. Meals, again, a question we get asked regularly about is meal service, because obviously people have concerns that if there's a number of people coming in at a given time for dinner, breakfast, lunch, whatever the meal may it be that a case that only some people can go in at a time? No, that is not the case. In the main, it would be very much the same as had been prior to the close down of COVID-19. However, due to physical distancing, reservations may be required and there may be some staggering of service. So those may be in place. However, the one thing I would say to you is, and because I work so closely with our industry, I have confidence in saying this, each business will be aware of its own capacity, and I will have put in place the required measures to ensure that all guests are accommodated. Now, I'll give you an example of that maybe at breakfast, where the traditional dining room may now not be used for breakfast. A larger venue in the hotel may be redesigned to accommodate groups or individuals, for that matter, to comply with physical distancing. So again, really your clients shouldn't notice a huge difference. The biggest thing that they're going to see is that physical distancing is being managed by the actual property. But again, the Irish tourism industry are very conscious of ensuring that they keep pushing that Irish welcome forward. So that's just a very quick overview of our guidelines. But as a result of developing the guidelines, we then realized that, through some research that we had carried out, that there was still a concern amongst the public as to whether they were going to be safe when they re-entered properties after a long period of time where they hadn't been engaging with others. So as a result, we developed a COVID-19 safety charter. So the COVID-19 Safety Charter, in advance of the tourism sector reopening, Fáilte Ireland launched this new charter initiative designed to boost public confidence in the safety of tourism businesses and to give reassurance to both the domestic and the international visitor. So how does this work? Well, there's 3 stages to it. The COVID-19 Safety Charter is a voluntary initiative. All tourism and hospitality businesses who sign up for the charter are committing to following the reopening guidelines, which I've just walked through with you. All employees must complete an infection control program for tourism businesses before they return to work. And that ties in with the return to work safely protocol that the Government of Ireland have developed. The COVID-19 Safety Charter would be displayed throughout each compliant business as well as their online platforms. So just to mention to you, this is a Government of Ireland endorsed hospitality and tourism program for hospitality and tourism businesses. And it's there to ensure that when businesses reopen, that they can instill confidence in the public who will be coming to visit them. So just to give you a little bit of information on the infection prevention control for tourism businesses and why we designed this course. Well, as I've already said, but I'm going to reiterate it, it's there to reinforce the confidence of both the domestic and international visitor in our tourism businesses. It's there to promote tourism businesses which are compliant with hygiene and cleaning requirements, which will help in the prevention and control of COVID-19. And it's there to ensure that all employees and management understand the importance of preventing the spread of the infection and ensure the safety of all in line with the government's public health advice. So that is the reason we developed it, and we've had a phenomenal interest in this particular program. Now, I'm just giving you a view of what the actual charter emblem looks like. And what we're doing is we're supplying a wide range of physical assets, but as well as digital assets. So that's just giving you an idea, and we're encouraging businesses to display them where they can, when they can. So basically, whenever you see the COVID-19 Safety Charter logo, you can be assured that recommended safety and cleaning guidelines are being adhered to, and the staff members have completed the essential hygiene and safety control training. Now, we feel that's so important, and I've repeated that a few times because we want to ensure that message gets across to you so that you can then ensure that your clients are comfortable and confident with the tourism product in Ireland. So to date, the Fáilte Ireland COVID-19 Safety Charter has been live for just less than 3 weeks. And to date, we've had over 1,395 properties have signed up for that. Now, the reason we haven't had more at this stage is because quite a number of properties haven't as yet reopened. They're beginning to reopen over the next couple of weeks. And we're confident that by in August, that number is going to be substantially higher. But within 3 weeks of a programme starting, we're delighted to see those figures. But where we're even more delighted to see is that that equates to 26,924 employees. So that's 26,924 employees who have committed to understanding how they can actually make the guest journey a safe and comfortable journey, who also understand how they can prevent the spread of the infection and ensure that Ireland can remain open and welcoming to both the domestic and the international visitors. So again, just to re-emphasize, this charter, when you see it, will give you the comfort to know that these businesses have gone through this charter process, but also that we as Fáilte Ireland are also spot checking businesses. We don't just give the charter and walk away from it. We're actually engaging and talking to these businesses, ensuring that they're meeting the guidelines and ensuring that they are compliant with the outline of the charter. So that's a very quick overview as to where we are. But what I would like to say to you is that we have a number of different guidelines which are currently sitting on the fáilteireland.ie website. We have a COVID-19 section which brings you directly to each of these. So again, if you wanted to have a little bit more comfort and a little bit more understanding of what is in the guidelines, please feel free to actually visit this and look at these documents. The final thing I'll say about each of these documents are they are living documents, and as public health advice changes or progresses, we will actually amend each of these documents to actually reflect the change in the public health advice. So again, we would recommend that people not download them, but continue to look at them live on the site, because then you will see any amendments that may have been added which may be relevant to your clients when you're actually arranging their vacation. So I unfortunately cannot, we have a slight problem with the sound, I think, unless Audrey is going to tell me the sound has changed, but I know this is being downloaded afterwards, and there's a nice little video to watch on the safety charter, which again gives you more of an outline on it. Oh, sorry. So that then is, I'm determined to show this video with no sound, I'm afraid. So apologies on that. So I'm just trying to. So that is my presentation, and I am available later for questions. So thank you all very much for your time, and I would like to thank Siobhan and the team for inviting me on today to discuss with you. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Tara, and we'll send a link to the video around with afterwards. We do have a few questions coming in, I think particularly around coach tourism, but we'll come to those at the Q&A after the next session. So the next presentation is Deborah Avery, who's the Senior Certification and Grading Officer with Tourism Northern Ireland. So Deborah, I might hand over to you there if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks.
The other screen share, yeah, okay.
There we go. Thanks, Deborah.
So as Siobhan said, my name's Deborah Avery and I work for the Quality and Standards Department of Tourism Northern Ireland. So today, similar to what Tara has went through, I am going to go through Northern Ireland reopening for tourism, the guidelines for hospitality and tourism operators, the industry standard that has been created from the guidelines, and to look at some of the specific queries and concerns that you and your visitors may have. So Northern Ireland reopened for business. Our self-catering properties were permitted to reopen from the 26th of June. Our hotels, bars and restaurants were permitted to reopen from July 3rd, as well as our visitor attractions, and our spas and leisure facilities from July 6th. Many of these have now reopened, and some are due to reopen in the coming weeks as they have decided to undergo some upgrade and some additional work. We're not aware of any that do not plan to reopen, so we're very happy that all businesses are reopening this, hopefully this summer. The guidelines that what has been done to produce the safety and the reopening is their publication of the Department of the Economies and Tourism Northern Ireland's guidance documents. The main one of these is the overarching document called Working Safely During COVID-19 Visitor Economy Guidance. And this is an overarching document aimed at business owners, operators and workers in hotels and other tourist accommodation, indoor and outdoor attractions, experiences, hospitality businesses, including bars, restaurants and cafes. This is a set of guidelines and principles to help businesses put processes in place to manage staff and customer safety. There are 2 subsections to this, and one is on hotels and accommodation and one is on restaurants, pubs and bars. Following on from the guidelines, we too identified the need for an industry standard, and this came about to creating the Good to Go industry standard. This was produced in conjunction with the UK tourist boards, and an industry standard was launched to signpost businesses that are adhering to the government guidelines. So looking firstly at working safely in COVID-19, the visitor economy guidance. This information provided was intended to help businesses make decisions that would enable them to reopen as safely as possible for both their workers and their customers. Businesses were required to translate the guidance into specific actions depending on the unique nature, size and type of business, how they were organised, operated and managed. It is published on the Tourism Northern Ireland website and can be seen on Northern Ireland Business Info website also. This guidance allowed businesses to undertake unique risk assessments that would allow them to make specific actions relevant to their own businesses. The guidance is based largely on the UK government guidelines, and they're tailored by Northern Ireland, by the Department of Economy, and we worked in conjunction with statutory agencies and industry stakeholders through the Tourism Recovery Working Group. We've worked with the Department of the Economy, other Northern Ireland executive departments, the Public Health Agency and the Health and Safety Executive and industry sectoral groups to bring the key requirements that needed to be undertaken to deliver business safely in COVID-19 pandemic. The key principles of this document were that businesses would carry out risk assessments and they would revise all their standard operating procedures. They would develop suitable cleaning, hand washing and hygiene procedures in all elements of their business. Where possible, employees were encouraged to work from home, so administrative staff may continue to work from home and booking systems may continue to operate remotely. They would maintain, within the premises, they would maintain the recommended social distancing requirements. Where people couldn't maintain the recommended distance, the business was required to manage the transmission rate, and information was to be clearly communicated to bring awareness of symptoms and what to do if symptoms were present. So all staff have been trained in the new procedures for the business and the new processes that the business would work to. These guidance documents are all available on tourismni.com, and they're also best practice advice for other sectors also available. The Good to Go industry standard was created as the official UK mark to signal that a tourism and hospitality business has worked hard to follow the government and industry guidelines. And this symbol signifies that a place has maintained cleanliness and aids social distancing. This symbol, as with Fáilte Ireland's symbol, is to confidence to you booking and to visitors, domestic visitors and international visitors, to feel confident that they can book this property and this attraction and know that these procedures have been followed. The industry standard is a COVID-related check. It ensures that processes are in place and that employees have been fully trained and briefed in all their new processes. It was built directly from the guidance documents, and it focuses on the risk assessments for COVID-19. and the key guidelines, including social distancing and cleanliness. It's a self-certification process, and operators sign up to the guidance, and they have to give a commitment to work in line with those guidance. They're given continual updates, and any updates are their responsibility to maintain. It has been devised in conjunction with industry membership bodies, and the self-assessment is specific to each sector. So hotels have theirs, self-catering, visitor attractions. Once they have passed this, businesses will then receive a certificate, and they will be permitted to display the logo on their premises and on their marketing material. In the short time since this has been launched, 537 businesses have achieved this award. They're the figures to date on Friday past. Many businesses are currently working through the processes, and a list of businesses that have been accredited will soon be available on Discover Northern Ireland. At the present time, if you have any specific inquiries for premises, they can be emailed to us at qa@tourismni.com. So what might you expect in our hotels and attractions now? Well, more signage in place to communicate the new procedures. Clear social distancing in place. 2 meters is to be maintained where possible. Additional hygiene provisions, well-placed hand sanitising stations in all public areas and in high traffic areas. PPE, face masks and visors may be worn by staff who may not be able to maintain a 1 metre social distance, and screens may be in place at check-in desks on arrival to hotels or visitor attractions. You'll also see a higher level of communication in advance of arrival and on arrival, and that is just to ensure the guests are comfortable with the new norm. The website, social media pages and booking confirmations will outline any new procedures that are now in place. Many of our operators have short videos on their social media pages showing the change in processes and what and how operations are now managed. Card payments are being encouraged in many operations, and cash payment options with additional sanitation facilities are often be seen. Our staff are well trained and able to reassure guests of the safety measures that are now in place. With regard to cleanliness regimes and processes, tables are cleaned and sanitised after each use. High touch points will be frequently sanitised throughout the day. Physical menus cleaned and sanitised before being issued. There will be a greater use of technology. Many of our operators have options for contactless check-in, payments, menus available on your own device via apps and QR codes. You'll find that our meals, table served meals, will be more regularly seen with very few options on buffet suggestions, and where these are will be individually packaged. Capacity changes. There's no capacity change in accommodation. Our dining areas and restaurants will have reduced capacity to allow for the minimum of 1 metre social distancing. At present, our pubs can only accommodate dining guests indoors with table service provided, and pubs with outdoor space can serve drinks without meals, provided that it's table service and that social distancing is maintained. So in regard to arrival to Northern Ireland, countries with a very low COVID-19 transmission rate and those with a medium risk are now available to arrive in Northern Ireland without any need for self-isolation. The rules for entering the UK changed, and these now mean that you must self-isolate if you arrive to Northern Ireland from a country outside the common travel area, i.e. England, Scotland, Wales, Isle of Man and the Republic of Ireland. However, if you are arriving from a low to medium risk country, you are exempt from the 14-day self-isolation. There is no requirement to self-isolate on arrival if you're arriving from one of the 70 plus countries that are listed, and I will share the list also. These include Spain, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Japan, South Korea, and many more. This list can be viewed here on the nidirect.gov.uk website, and the full list of countries which are exempt from 14-day self-isolation can be viewed there. These regulations apply to people travelling to Northern Ireland by train, ferry, coach, air, or any route. And it applies regardless of how you've arrived in Northern Ireland, whether you come directly to Northern Ireland, whether you come via the Republic of Ireland, or whether you come via another UK region. You will need to self-isolate if you were in or if you transited through a country that's not on that list in the 14 days before your arrival in Northern Ireland. And as Siobhan mentioned earlier, this is a very fluid situation and the list is constantly changing as the public health view the need to change. So it's important that you continue to check this list if you are planning travel. Arrival at our airports, face coverings have to be worn on flights and in airport terminals. There are no temperature checks or testing currently in place at the airports. There is enhanced signage encouraging good hand hygiene, and there is well-placed hand sanitizing stations in all airports. As of July the 10th, face coverings are required on all public transport, trains, buses and coaches, and they're also required in our transport stations. This does not include or does not apply to coach tours, taxis or private hire vehicles. However, many of these have their own requirements, and we would encourage you to check at the time of booking these. If you arrive in Northern Ireland and are displaying symptoms, visitors should be tested. If they test positive, they would be required to continue to self-isolate for 7 further days. The requirement to travel home only applies where it is safe to do so, i.e. in private transport. Where this is not possible, visitors would self-isolate where they are. This advice only applies to those displaying symptoms, so there is currently no requirement to test all other guests. The Public Health Agency have contact tracers, and they will manage the test and trace process in the background. They make contact with anyone who the affected person has been in close sustained contact with. The Test, Trace, Protect programme is operated and managed by the Public Health Agency. Their contact tracing teams are made up of trained staff who contact the person who is tested positive. They identify those people with whom that person has had close contact and who could be at risk of developing COVID-19. And they in turn contact them to advise them of the appropriate next steps. Regarding booking procedures and cancellation policies, we would encourage you to liaise with your hotel or accommodation or visitor attraction directly to discuss the booking and arrival procedures, their opening times and their reopening dates. With regard to cancellation policies, it is advisable to check these with the provider directly or view any updates to their terms and conditions on their website. In relation to protocols relating to tours, we have a set of protocol has been designed and is on the Tourism NI website. And these outline checks that all tourism partners to find out their current, encourages you to check with your tourism partners to find out their current rules and protocols. It also encourages you to check the itinerary carefully to allow for current opening rules and advanced ticketing requirements, as many of these will have changed. More time may be required as groups may have to be split into smaller numbers, and specific arrival times are likely to be required to manage social distancing. For walk-in tours, no more than 15 guests is advised per guide, and our coaches are likely to be no more than 1/3 to a half full. Enhanced safety and hygiene protocols will be in place during tours and at any venues you will visit. Masks and face coverings may be required, and for that reason we would encourage you to check directly with the operator. Information on the protocol relating to tours can be found at the COVID-19 support hub on the Tourism NI website. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions at the end, but if you have any other questions, these can be emailed to myself, and if I don't have the answer for you, I will ensure that one of the team are able to get an answer back to you. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Deborah. That's great. Lots of information there and lots of questions, which is brilliant. So Louise, I might hand over to you then to try and group those together and
Sure, Siobhan, thanks for that. Hi everyone, as Siobhan mentioned, my name is Louise Finnegan and I'm Head of Business Partnership here with Tourism Ireland. I'll be looking after the Q&A session now in the last part of our webinar today, and we already have quite a few questions in already from across the spectrum and covering a number of different topics. So we'll get into that in just a minute, if you don't mind. I do just want to take a minute or two to give a bit of an overview on some key areas and themes that we've seen a lot of questions on. And the first of those is on travel restrictions. You've heard a lot already about some of the travel restrictions that are in place, particularly from Deborah, and Tara alluded to those also. So you heard from Deborah the mention of safe travel corridors list, and that's operating in Northern Ireland currently. And as Deborah said, that is a list of countries from which you don't have to self-isolate. The list for the Republic of Ireland, as Siobhan mentioned, will be announced next Monday on July the 20th. Now, we don't know what that list is yet or exactly what countries are on it, but as soon as we do, we will share that with all of our trade partners via our Tourism Ireland colleagues in market and also via our trade website. What we do understand so far is that anyone coming from a country on that green list will not be required to self-isolate. That list will change, as Siobhan mentioned, and will be updated by government every few weeks, so we'll keep you updated on that via our trade website and our colleagues. So I just want to try and be very clear about this. If your clients have been in a country in the last 14 days that is not on that green list for the Republic of Ireland, then they will be required to self-isolate. So for example, if you're an American but you live in Germany, and Germany is the only place you've been in the last 14 days prior to your trip, and if Germany is on the green list, then you won't need to self-isolate on arrival. If on the other hand, you're German, and you live in the US, and the US is the only place you've been in the last 14 days. If the USA is not on the green list, then you will be required to self-isolate. So visitors and guests need to consider where they've been in the last 14 days prior to arrival in Ireland. If they've been in a country not on the green list for the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland's Safe Corridors list, then they will be required to self-isolate for 14 days upon arrival. And as both Siobhan and Deborah mentioned, those lists will be updated periodically, so please do stay in close contact with your Tourism Ireland representative for updates on that, and we'll share them as we get them. I'm going to move on from travel restrictions for a moment to cover some other areas. I think we've quite a bit and quite a few questions to cover in a short amount of time. So one of the other areas that we've had quite a few queries about is in relation to policies for specific attractions or suppliers. So I want to make sure that, again, that we're all very clear that none of the agencies can actually regulate commercial terms and conditions between businesses. So we can't intervene in those commercial arrangements and contracts, and there are no blanket policies in place for cancellations or rates, for example. So as we've heard previously, both Fáilte Ireland and Tourism Northern Ireland strongly encourage all of their suppliers to work closely with you, their overseas partners, to come to mutually acceptable arrangements. So we would ask that you please talk directly with those suppliers to discuss any particular challenges that you're having. And following that, actually, for those of you participating in virtual MEHL and or virtual Meet the Buyer over the next couple of weeks, that's a great opportunity for you to speak directly with your supplier to understand not only what changes there may be to commercial terms, but also to get more detail on exactly what their product or service or the experience will look like as we emerge from this COVID-19 situation. We've also received quite a few inquiries and questions now about airline schedules, and that's a very tricky one, purely because there's so much change in air scheduling at the moment. Just yesterday, Ryanair announced some cancellations from UK airports into some regional Ireland airports. So there's a lot of uncertainty again around that whole area of flights and flight scheduling. So we would advise that you liaise directly with the airline or the airline representative for updates on schedules and rates. So I think we can take some questions now, and they're coming in thick and fast. Before starting those, I'm just going to welcome Conor Carberry. You might have seen Conor pop up on our panel there. Conor is the Business Solutions Manager for Tourism Northern Ireland, and I think he's going to take one or two questions for us as well. So let's jump straight in there, and I think the first question there is really for Siobhan. Siobhan, promotional activity and promotional campaigns around Ireland, when do you think they will take place and in what markets?
Yeah, I think we're going to be very much led by the research I talked about earlier, that together then with feedback from our partners overseas and the teams in market. And then we have to ensure that that's all aligned with the government guidelines in both source markets and in Ireland and Northern Ireland. So we have plans ready to go the very minute it's the right time to go, but we just don't know the right time to go yet. The initial research will tell us that it will be a little while yet, but we are ready to go very quickly when the time is right.
Okay, thanks for that, Siobhan. The next question I have is in relation to ferry travel. What will the land bridge travel, so for example from the EU through the UK into Ireland, look like, and can people stop over in the UK, or will they not be allowed to enter Ireland if they do that. So I might take that one first off. As I mentioned previously, we'll know the full list of countries on the Republic of Ireland's green list on the 20th of July. And assuming the country of origination is on the list and the UK is on the list, then there should be no problem with entering the Republic of Ireland through a land bridge, and there'll be no isolation requirements. If travellers have been in a country not on the green list within the previous 14 days, then they will have to self-isolate. Deborah, is that the same for Northern Ireland? I think it's pretty similar.
Yes, there's no issue if they're entering Northern Ireland, provided they've been in the UK or ROI or one of the countries on that list for the past 14 days. If they've been in a country that's not on the list, then they would have to self-isolate.
Great, thanks for that. A related question then, what is the procedure for travellers who stay in the Republic of Ireland and then want to travel to Northern Ireland and vice versa? I think Conor, maybe you'd want to take that one.
Yeah, basically on that, provided they're coming from a country on the safe corridors travel list or from within the common travel area and have been there for the past 14 days, then there'll be no issue or requirement to self-isolate when arriving in Northern Ireland.
Thanks for that. And I think the same is pretty much true of the South as well. Again, it comes down to where visitors or guests have been within the previous 14 days. And if the countries they've been in have all been on the green list, then no requirement for self-isolation. Another question, actually, this one might be for me. Do any forms need to be completed when arriving into Dublin Airport? And actually, this is very similar to the situation in Northern Ireland, and Deborah already alluded to this. The current situation is the current situation, and I mean the current situation from now until next Monday. The current situation is that arriving passengers must complete a public health passenger locator form before they arrive in Ireland. The Irish government has issued these to all airlines and sea carriers, and visitors should receive a copy of the form before you arrive into Dublin Airport or port. That form is also available to download online, however. The completed form then must be handed to immigration officers upon arrival, and visitors may be contacted during the 14 days after they arrive in Ireland to check that they are self-isolating. Obviously, with the publication of the Green List next Monday, that guidance may change, and as and when it does, we'll update all our trade partners, and again, we'll do that via our colleagues in market and our trade website also. Deborah, I think the situation, I think you've mentioned that already, is pretty similar for Northern Ireland.
Yes.
Okay. When visiting Ireland, where and when should masks be worn? Well, in Southern Ireland, wearing a face covering is now mandatory, similar to Northern Ireland, on all public transport, and it is recommended in situations where it's difficult to practice social distancing. So, for example, in shops. Deborah, I think, again, you referenced that already, and I think we have a similar situation in Northern Ireland also.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. Okay, slightly different tack. What happens if you come down with symptoms during a visit? What are the procedures around that? Tara, we might bounce that one over to you since you haven't had one yet.
Problem. We're basically, in the guidelines, we outlined to all tourism businesses that a clinician must be called, and the clinician then will take over the course of action if somebody is
Tara, sorry, your sound is just a bit low. Have you moved away from your microphone or something? Oh,
apologies. Not only do I have technical issues with the video, I have technical issues with sound. Apologies.
I think that's a user interface issue is what they call that.
Well, glad to know. So sorry, what I was saying there is that in our guidelines, we clearly outline to businesses that if somebody reports a prospective case of COVID-19, a clinician must be called. The clinician then will take over the course of action from there. They will deal directly with the Health Service Executive in Ireland, which is the health service relating directly into the government.
Okay, thanks for that. And Deborah, do you want to just give us the view on that one?
Yes, the same here. Anybody who develops symptoms is advised to self-isolate and to be tested as soon as possible. And that's being carried out by the Public Health Agency. And there's 4 drive-in test centres in Northern Ireland that appointments can be made online for. And results are within 72 hours. If they do test positive, they would have to self-isolate for the remaining 7 days. And they would have to be free of fever for at least 48 hours. The Public Health Agency also manages all the track and trace, so they will actually liaise with you if you're test positive to see who you've been in close sustained contact with, and then they will contact those people.
Okay, Thanks for that, Deborah. Slight change of tack in this one, back to, I suppose, a more commercial question. Room rates in Ireland had been increasing over the last few years. Are they likely to decline next year in light of the current situation? Tara, what's your take on that one?
Well, as you said earlier yourself, Fáilte Ireland as a state organisation cannot regulate commercial agreements. However, we are working very closely with businesses so that they can understand what their cost base is. And the feedback we've gotten from operators is that they obviously need to cover their bottom line, they need to cover their costs, but they are evaluating each contract. And there is no spike as such that we are aware of at this moment in time in rates increase. The one thing I will say, though, is because there is a lot of extra infrastructure required in properties, including extra employees, to ensure the well-being and safety of the business, the employees and the guests. So there are extra costs associated with each business now that may not have been there previously. However, we have designed a number of different programs as Fáilte Ireland to actually assist businesses in identifying what their cost base is and how best that they can actually price their various contracts.
Okay, great. And Deborah?
Same as with Tara, obviously we don't liaise with operators directly on price setting or rate setting, but we would work with them to ensure that they're promoting good value for visitors. And our tourism businesses are very keen to get back to business, and they'll not be setting rates that will deter visitors. We would have seen maybe a slight increase in 2018 in room rates, but with the increase in room stock in 2019, we would have found that rates have become much more competitive and much more favourable over the past year.
Great, thanks for that. So I think the bottom line also is just to reach out directly to providers and speak to your partners. Thanks for that. A little bit of a shift, and I think this one has been touched on, but what are the coach seating rules? Will there be guidelines around coach travel, and when will they be issued? Tara, can I come, Deborah, I'll come back to you on that one.
We have tour guide protocols already published on tourismni.com, and many of the principles of this will be carried across for coach tours. There's no specific guidelines for coach tours as yet, but a lot of the guidelines that are there are done for tour guides, and a lot of principles will remain the same, and they do encourage 30 to 50% seating capacity of like a reduction, obviously, the normal seating capacity.
Okay, and Tara, I think those guidelines are in development with you as well, are they?
They are, yes, and we're developing guidelines not just for coach transport, for tourism transport. So it's covering a wide spectrum. It would include river ferries as well as cruise boats, etc. So, but for the coach tours, we're actually seeking currently advice from the Public Health Department on the capacity within coaches, because at the moment on public transport, it is a requirement to wear face coverings. It is not currently on private transport. However, the CTTC, which is Coach Tourism Transport Council, are encouraging their members to all encourage people to wear face coverings, which in turn will mean that there is larger capacity on the coaches.
Great, thanks for that. Contact details. Will tourists be asked to leave contact details with every place they visit to assist with contact tracing? Tara?
Yes, they will. And again, this is advice that we have. A public health advice would state that, just use an example of a restaurant, they will take it for one member of the party, and then the other members of the party, the one member of the party needs to keep a record of everybody else's for a minimum of 1 month.
Okay, thanks for that. And Deborah?
We have been advised that there's no requirement for any extra details above and beyond the registration within a hotel reception. However, a lot of visitor attractions and restaurants will be taking bookings to try and manage their numbers that they're expecting on any particular day or time. But again, like Tara, that would be just one member of the party. The Public Health Agency have advised that if a person tests positive, that they will then get from them the information relating to who they've been in close contact with. So they say that's a system that they have managed for many years, and they don't need any extra requirements or details taken off people.
Okay, thanks for that. Are there temperature checks at Dublin Airport? Now, you already mentioned, I think, Deborah, the situation in the Northern Ireland airports. I can tell you that all airports have implemented enhanced health and safety protocols, including enhanced cleaning procedures, hand sanitizers, signage everywhere, screens in place, and they are all in compliance with the EASA guidelines. However, temperature checks are not in place in Dublin Airport. They're not required. That may, of course, change in the future, but for the moment, there's no requirement for temperature checks. I'm just conscious of time, so we might just wrap up with the last one. What have I got here? There's a lot of repetition in questions, sorry. Here's a specific geographic one. When will Ireland start to accept international tourists from the UAE and GCC? Well, again, currently you must self-isolate upon entering the Republic of Ireland currently, and travel from certain countries after the 20th of July will not require self-isolation, but we won't know that until next Monday. So keep an eye on that. We'll definitely communicate the list. And for any countries that are not on that list, self-isolation of 14 days will be required. Conor, we might wrap that one up with you. Is that the same then for Northern Ireland?
Under Northern Ireland in terms of not being currently on the UK's safe travel corridor list, but as Deborah's touched on her presentation, and Louise, as you said before there, this list is, it's reviewed on a regular basis. So when that is reviewed, we'll kind of keep in touch with the Tourism Ireland market representatives and let everyone know.
Thanks, Conor. Right, I think we're just out of time, unfortunately. I do have still a lot of questions here, but I'm going to have to wind this session down. Those questions that we haven't gotten to, we will answer. We'll provide an FAQ or a question sheet on our trade website. So we will make sure that all of our TI market contacts, your contacts in markets, can direct you to that and to all the information that's been shared with you today. The presentations, I know Tara will share the video, and further information that we get when and as we get it. Siobhan, I think that's all I have. Do you want to just close us out?
Yeah, no, just say thanks again, everybody, for your time. Do keep the questions coming through, because we can update that FAQ on the website all the time. So if there's any other questions after today, just direct them through the Tourism Ireland team, and we'll get the answers for you and update things. So listen, thanks very much, everybody. And thanks a million to Deborah and Conor and Tara for joining us today, and Louise and Audrey for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Thanks a million, everybody.